Lafayette, we are sent by the governor to offer you a warm and affectionate reception in the state of North Carolina. Associated as your name is with that of the beloved father of our country, not less in the dark and dismal nights of the Revolution than in the periods of its glory. We cannot but greatly rejoice at your arrival among us, that you may receive the grateful salutations of a free people, some of whom have witnessed your generous exertions in their cause, and all of whom have been accustomed to connect your name with whatever is just and elevated in sentiment or praiseworthy and benevolent in conduct. Consistently devoted as your life has been to the cause of rational liberty and liberal institutions in two hemispheres, it must be a source of the purest gratification to you to survey in this, that fabric of political freedom which has grown up and flourished under the practical operation of principles for which you have made so many sacrifices. To witness the powerful effects of a just government in expanding the moral energies of man and laying deep the foundations of his happiness. We rejoice, General, that after an interval of nearly half a century, you see the sons of those in whose cause you fought and bled in the tranquil enjoyment of those blessings, deeply sensible of their value and firmly resolved to transmit them unimpaired to their children. And although in your long, extensive tour through our country, you will of course see different degrees of improvement and find some of our sister states more happily situated to give you a reception suited to the universal estimate of your worth, yet amid the thousands who hail your arrival, there are none to whom it affords the higher satisfaction than to our fellow citizens. Nor can a mind like yours view with indifference the improvements made in our state since your former journey through it to join our army in the most hopeless crisis of the struggle. You will now see smiling villages and cultivated fields and an industrious population where before an almost trackless forest overspread the country. You will see a nation of farmers, unobtrusively cherishing the domestic virtues, practicing that of hospitality in its primitive purity, and gratefully feeling that a more fit occasion for its exercise can never occur than in welcoming to their hearts and firesides the last surviving general of the Revolution, their venerable and beloved fellow citizen, Lafayette. Thank you both very much.
General Lafayette, your arrival in our state is one of the most acceptable events that could have occurred in our day and generation. We are deeply sensible of the blessings we enjoy under a free constitution and must refer to the circumstances under which their foundation was laid. It is impossible to review the history of these times and not dwell with delight on the name and services of Lafayette. Animated with the purest love of liberty, you relinquished what ordinary minds esteem the choicest blessings of life to aid in its defense. You left family, friends, fortune, and country to encounter the perils of a military life in an unequal and most hopeless contest. In the darkest period of our revolution, instead of being appalled at the extent of the danger, you derived new ardor from the gathering storm. How well I remember our time together at Brandywine and Valley Forge, and the trials and tribulations we shared with the immortal Washington there. We can never forget, General, how much we owe to your skill and gallantry in the field, to the strength of your countenance and example inspired to our just, desponding cause. Your generous efforts were also successful in procuring for us the aid of your brave and high-minded countrymen. We recall the emotions of joy you expressed when you communicated to us the first intelligence that your sovereign had become the ally of these infant states. History has presented a faithful record of your services in our cause. All have felt a keen interest in your life and fortunes amidst the great events which have agitated Europe. We have mourned over your personal sufferings, but we have been consoled that no adverse fortune could make you cease to be steady and incorruptible friend of rational liberty and the empire of the laws. You are enshrined in the affections of all the enlightened friends of humankind. It is our warmest and cordial wish that your visit to the people whom you have so greatly benefited may be attended with every circumstance that can render it happy, and that the evening of your days may be solaced by the consciousness of that a virtuous life and a generous devotion to their cause has secured you the gratitude of millions of free people.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Colonel. At every step of my progress through the United States, I'm called to enjoy the emotions arising from patriotic feelings and endearing recollections from the sight of the improvements I witness and from the affectionate welcomes I have the happiness to receive. Those sentiments are particularly excited when, upon entering the interesting and prosperous towns I have visited and being able to admire the actual progress and anticipate its future destinies, convinced as I am that the generous and enlightened people of North Carolina will continue all assistance to improve the natural advantages of Northampton County and make it more and more useful to the state. Your kind allusions to past times, your flattering commendation of my personal services in our common cause, your remembrance of my peculiar struggles call for my most grateful thanks. The spirit of independence, early evidenced by the fathers of this great land and of this borough, is highly honorable to these United States. I cordially join in your wishes for the universal emancipation of mankind and beg you, my dear sirs, and the citizens of Northampton to accept the tribute of my deep and lively gratitude for your so very honorable and gratifying reception. Thank you.
Colonel Lafayette, in my capacity as mayor, on behalf of the Committee of Arrangements who stand with me today, I would like to bid you a warm and affectionate welcome on behalf of the citizens of the town of Northampton Courthouse. As a nation's guest and as a supporter of liberty and freedom on two continents, we really appreciate you coming to visit us today. We extend our warmest affections to your traveling companion, your son, George Washington Lafayette, named after the father of our country, and Louis Levasseur, your private secretary, traveling with you. And we would like to extend all the hospitalities that our small village has to offer you during the visit. We would also like to extend to you an invitation to join us for dinner at what was the Calvert Tavern, just down the street, and we would appreciate if you could join us.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
General Lafayette, once again, sir, welcome to the land of liberty. As a friend of the United States, a friend of the good state of North Carolina, a friend of Northampton Courthouse, I've been authorized by the citizens of this town to offer you a proclamation in your honor. I will present that to you and then I will read it. Thank you, sir. Town of Northampton Courthouse proclamation presented to General Marquis of Lafayette. Whereas the United States, the good state of North Carolina, the town of Northampton Courthouse have received you as the nation's guest. Whereas you are a true friend of America. Whereas you shed your blood for America in the Battle of Brandywine. Whereas you played a crucial role in the siege and the Battle of Yorktown, which effectively ended the Revolutionary War. Whereas you're the last surviving Major General of the Revolutionary War. Whereas you're an undeviating defender of rational freedom and the rights of man. Whereas you carry in your heart the love of liberty. Now therefore, I, Jim Gossett, Mayor of the town of Northampton Courthouse, do hereby proclaim February 27, 1825 to be Lafayette Day, as we express our sincere appreciation to General Lafayette for his many contributions to America's independence and for the enduring friendship between America and France. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
May we stand for prayer. Almighty God, thou art the strength of all who trust in thee. Grant unto us confidence in thy boundless wisdom, goodness, and abiding love, that we may endure all things with quiet spirits, meditating on thy divine peace, heavenly rest. Lord, Master, our help, our provider, save those among us who are in trouble, have mercy on the lonely, lift up the fallen, show thyself to the needy, heal the ungodly, convert thy people who wander, feed the hungry, raise up the weak, comfort the faint-hearted. Uphold us by thy mercy that we never faint or fail, but faithfully do the duties of life. Especially today we beseech thee to guide and protect General Lafayette and his fellow travelers, his son George Washington Lafayette, his private secretary Auguste Levasseur, as they continue General Lafayette's farewell tour of America as the nation's guest. Free all who are terrified by fear, afflicted by want, harassed by trouble, disabled by illness. Show them thy tender love. Raise them up in a renewed life and support them with daily compassion. And most gracious and merciful Father, we beseech thee, sanctify these creatures of food and drink for our use, and make them helpful for our lives, and make us thankful for all thy blessings. Through Christ our Lord and only Savior. Amen. Would you join me as we sing the Star Spangled Banner?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose long stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Miss Kendall rolls one of our flower girls, who will entertain us with a poem about liberty.
A freedom song. For liberty we will stand, a nation born in this new land, with courage bright and spirit free, a future bright for you and me.
Thank you.
First in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. To General Washington.
General Lafayette, the nation's guest, nowhere more welcome than in North Carolina.
Here.
To Northampton County, to the state of North Carolina, may you continue to prosper into the future.
Return to Lafayette, our venerated guest, may this immense temple of freedom, which as a master workman you helped erect, even stand as a lesson to oppressors, an example to the oppressed, a sanctuary for the rights of mankind.
General Lafayette, may every nation of the earth contending for her just rights have a Washington, a Lafayette, and a Yorktown. Here.
The departed heroes and patriots of our revolution, we leave them alone with their glory.
Here.
I'd like to make a toast to the venerable roof of Mount Vernon, under which in early years I was so happy as to receive a great man's blessing.
To the Battle of Brandywine, the epic battle of the Revolutionary War when French and U.S. blood flowed together as a brotherly current and is offered a rich oblation to the altar of liberty. General Lafayette, our country, perpetual union among the United States, it has secured us in our times of danger. It will save the world. The state of North Carolina and our United States, prosperity to one and all.
General Lafayette, a patriot soldier whose youth, whose manhood, and whose age have been devoted to the battles of liberty.
France, may her destinies be as happy as she has assisted in not making ours.
France.
General Lafayette, the man whom adversity could not subdue, nor prosperity seduce.
Here, here.
It's a genuine privilege to be with you all as we gather to welcome General Lafayette to Jackson and to northeastern North Carolina. I'm pleased to bring greetings on behalf of the North Carolina Daughters of the American Revolution as we honor our esteemed General Lafayette and our beloved patriots who served in the glorious quest for liberty during the Revolutionary War. BNVO, General Lafayette.
My name is Helen Chapman. At the courthouse, I was representing my fourth great-grandfather, Colonel William Pope, who was injured in the jaw at the Battle of Brandywine and became good friends with Lafayette as he was recovering from an injury in his leg where he was shot. And they went on together to Valley Forge where they met up with General Washington. So in the family box of letters is one from my third great-grandmother, Mary Brown Pope, who was Colonel William Pope's daughter. And it was a letter to her brother Lucius Pope, who was living in Nashville at the time. And so I just wanted to share it with y'all today. It was written March 18th from Raleigh. He was living in Nashville at the time. It reads, "My dear brother, the great Lafayette has just passed through our city. He only remained a day and a half and came a day sooner than expected. We entertained him in the best possible Republican manner without any pomp of the northern cities. On the day of his arrival there was a splendid dinner prepared by Aunt Delia Haywood for his reception, and in the evening a ball, which was really elegant. The two rooms next Colonel Hawkins in the governor's house were thrown into one with pillars to support the upper partition. They were very handsomely ornamented with evergreens and flowers. In the center of the room there was a very elegant chandelier, independent of which there were other lights interspersed among suitable ornaments about the apartment. The morning he left, here, himself, son, and escort breakfast with us, and by that means we enjoyed his society for some time uninterrupted. About 1 o'clock he left this place for Fayetteville, accompanied by all the escort, with the exception of Papa, Colonel William Pope, who from indisposition could not attend. He was attacked with the rheumatism, something similar to that last summer, but in a less violent manner. General Houston called on us evening before last on his way from Congress. I suppose he is going to South Carolina. He did not say, but when Papa asked him why he did not remain longer with us, he said nothing very particularly hurried him on, only he wished to tell his constituents what he had been doing during his absence, and that he had to travel a circuitous route home. Now, y'all maybe know the history better than I do. I looked it up, and I don't really know Sam Houston's connection to South Carolina, only to Tennessee and later Texas. But that was pretty exciting for me to see. I do not believe I have written to you before since the presidential contest had been decided. If not, I heartily congratulate you on the election of General Jackson, as I know you were sanguine advocate of his. I never saw people so discontented in my life as some of our townsmen were. They were all like yourself, so very confident in the general election. Mama has been quite indisposed for the last few days, but is recovering. She directs me to say to you that she nor Papa have neither received a letter from you since your departure, and thinks it strange that you have not written. We have not heard from you since you wrote me on your arrival to Nashville, except through Major Sam Pope, who wrote to Papa some time since on business.
and states that you were just about that time going to the Western District. I received a letter from Brother Leonidas yesterday, and he was well except a cold or sore throat. He also complained of our silence. Cousins Lucy and Delia set off tomorrow for Hillsborough on a visit to Cousin Sally, where they will be until Cousin Rufus's return around mid-April. She mentioned some other family. Colonel would like to have nicknames for everyone. All the family join me with in love to you. Believe me, ever loved brother, your affectionate and fondly devoted sister, Mary B. Crowe. But yes, obviously, news was a little slower because this is dated in March, and so it was before the House of Representatives decided that John Quincy Adams was in fact president. Not Andrew Jackson. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, General Lafayette, ladies and gentlemen, it's a special privilege for me to be back in my home county and to see so many of my old friends and to address you today. I especially want to thank my friends Jim and Judy Gossip for their kind invitation and for the honor of speaking with you. On behalf of our President Alan Hoffman and the 1,500 members of the American Friends of Lafayette, I bring you greetings, our warmest regards, and our sincere congratulations on this remarkable event today. We are now at the midway point of our 13-month, 6,000-mile, 24-state commemoration of Lafayette's farewell tour. The American Friends of Lafayette has three simple but straightforward goals. The first, to commemorate Lafayette's visits to places like Northampton Courthouse on the day that he was here 200 years ago. The second, to celebrate his life and legacy as a relentless champion of human rights. And thirdly, to educate the public regarding the importance of Lafayette to our nation's history. And although the American Friends of Lafayette is a national level organization, it is at the state level where our concepts begin to turn into reality. I'd like to thank and recognize Mr. Dan Hopping, the North Carolina State Committee Chair, for his consistent efforts in supporting this and the many other events in our state. City government, tourism offices, and historical associations and museums are among our most enthusiastic supporters in this effort and are where the hard work gets done. It is here at the local level where your dedicated involvement and enthusiasm has resulted in this successful event. We recognize and thank these key partners and contributors. Mayor Hucks and the Town of Jackson, Mr. Dick Collier and the Tourism Development Authority, and the Northampton County Museum. As we remember Lafayette's critical role in achieving our nation's independence from Great Britain, we also remember his brave comrades in arms who, like Lafayette, left their homes to join the patriot cause. Members of the Northampton County Regiment of Militia fought at 6 battles during the war, including 2 critical battles here in North Carolina. They were present at the early Patriot victory at the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge in February 1776, a clear turning point in the war. 2 months later, the 4th Provincial Congress unanimously adopted the Halifax Resolves, only a few miles from here, the first official action in the colonies calling for independence. That bold document paved the way for the Declaration of Independence less than 3 months later. County militiamen were also at the crucial 1781 Battle of Guilford Courthouse. The British so-called victory that day was costly. Cornwallis's casualties totaled 25% of his force. His serious loss of manpower led him to abandon his campaign in the Carolinas and eventually make his way to Yorktown, where he would surrender his entire force at the siege in October of 1781 effectively ending the war. The services and sacrifices of the Northampton County Militia are certainly not forgotten. We welcome Lafayette back, and we celebrate him as the lifelong supporter of liberty, equality, and universal human rights. Viva Lafayette and viva Northampton County, home of patriots.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to claim a point of personal privilege. I'm Jimmy Moore, President of Murfreesboro Historical Association, Murfreesboro being the first town in North Carolina. But today we all were thoroughly touched by the gracious hospitality of the citizens of Northampton County. I give you the citizens of Northampton.
Here.
Here.
May I get your attention one last time, for just a moment. General Lafayette, if you step forward, sir. On behalf of the good citizens of the town of Northampton County, it's been an honor and privilege to have you present among us, and we would like to give you the key to the city. I'll read this. The key to the city of Northampton Courthouse, presented to General Marquis de Lafayette, February 27, 1825. We also have a gift as you continue your southern portion of your farewell tour of America. We want to present you with this gift. We'll hopefully give you some comfort along the way.
And we thank you for your hospitality and the authenticity that you've gone through for the meal. Let's give him a wonderful round of applause.
My good friend Jim, that has been the driving force behind today. Congratulations again, and thanks for all your hard work. It's been fascinating to see you do all this work, and congrats on a successful day. I just would like to share some thoughts as Jim asked me about why this tour was so significant, and then maybe share some thoughts about my visit to the Chateau of Lafayette near Paris just a couple months ago when I was in France over the Christmas holidays. So I'm the president of the Lafayette Trail, which is a nonprofit that has been interpreting the legacy of the Marquis all over the United States for 6 years now. We have put up over 170 markers across the entirety of the geography of the tour in 1824. That's about 170 markers across 25 states. That's over $200,000 worth of historical markers across half of the country. But the thoughts that I wanted to share is, you can ask yourself, why is a French aristocrat worthy of such honors 200 years later in a country that is based on democratic ideals? It's kind of a paradox. And I find it very interesting to see how Americans have cultivated a certain memory of Lafayette over the years that's actually become very unique and is not certainly shared in France to this day. So on your program, you can see that the Lafayette is actually called the Marquis de Lafayette. That is 100% contrary to what he wanted to be called. He wanted to be called a General Lafayette for a very simple reason. Marquis is something that you are born with, it's a title. Whereas a general is it's a military rank that you get if you decide to serve. In the case of Lafayette, he didn't choose to be a Marquis, but he chose to be a general. He wanted to be called a general to refer to his commitment to democratic principles as opposed to his aristocratic birth. Now, there's a reason why in 2025 the vast majority of Americans call him a Marquis de Lafayette. That is not because it's a mistake. It's because Americans to this day, it is very important since the time of the American Revolution, you call Lafayette Marquis de Lafayette because you want to preserve in your celebration of him his aristocratic origin. The American Revolution is a very, very, I'm going to say, new experiment. Nobody knows it's going to work out or not. And to have the support and the endorsement of a very powerful, very famous noble branch of the French aristocracy was an endorsement that a lot of the founding fathers and American leaders sought, because it gave credence, it gave a justification from a European aristocrat. It gave a dignifying endorsement of the American Revolution. So I don't think it's an accident that people call him Marquis today. I think it just means that Americans to this day celebrate how Lafayette was viewed all the way back during the American Revolution. It's very logical. Another point is today the descendant of William Polk mentioned that in Mr. Polk's address, there was a mention of the gallantry of Lafayette. Gallantry is a great word because it's kind of the halfway between a French aristocrat and a New World Republican or a New World Democrat. Lafayette was an aristocrat, that's true, but he did not follow the orders of the King of France like many of his fellow French people when he came here. He followed his heart. And it's very important to understand that because the gallantry of a French aristocrat combined with you follow your heart as a human being, in my opinion, is key to why the tour of 1824 became a big deal. It's because 50 years later, we still don't know if the American experiment is going to work or not. We still do not know if we're going to survive as an experiment. And we still have this man that over 50 years hasn't changed at all his political discourse about the greatness of this country. This is the greatest country on earth. It is based on founding principles that are enlightened, self-determination, equality. These are the values that are expressed in the founding documents of the United States, and that is why Lafayette decided to come here. Now, when the tour comes around, Lafayette is the bridge between different societies, different countries, different cultures, different ages. So he's the bridge between the American experiment, European despotism, between France, between the United States, between the founding generation, between the new generation. He serves a lot of connecting tissue roles, and certainly here in Jackson, the fact that he came here as the opening of, I'm going to say, of the southern tour of the United States with Virginia, certainly taps into the earlier time of his participation in the American Revolution. So and this is my take as a French national, there was a mention over here at some point of the Republican celebration that was given to Lafayette here. Republican is a very tricky word because in France, Republican means we're cutting your head if you don't agree with us. What it means is American republicanism, which means you respect the law as a sacred text. Like, you know, if a Christian reveres the Bible as the universal truth of the Christian faith, an American that loves freedom is going to respect the Constitution as the universal truth of the nation, for all men are created equal. That's American republicanism. It's you revere the law as your catechism, your faith, or what you believe in. In the case of Lafayette, he believed in freedom as a deity, as a sort of a god. And he decided to preach to whoever would listen the greatness of such vision of American republicanism, that if you believe fully in the text of the Constitution, if you uphold it, if you obey its laws, that's truly the only way to have equality and at the end of the day, freedom. That's opposed to France, where in France we've had republics that have decided to be created by torching the constitutional compact. Like Lafayette helped do a constitution in 1789, it was done away with. But in 1792 we have a republic in France, but a republic through blood, not through obedience to a sacred text. So this is very important because Lafayette, as a French aristocrat, is going to validate the American definition of republicanism for 13 months. He's going to go all around the country and say, this is a great country, this is the greatest place on earth, because since the American Revolution, the American people have not deviated at all from the principles that were laid out by the founding fathers during the Revolutionary War. And it's kind of a win-win for 13 months, both for Lafayette and for the Americans, because for Lafayette has spent since, I'm going to say 1792, has been in trouble. First for 5 years goes to jail, then spent another 20 to restore his credibility as a liberal in Europe. And this tour kind of gives Lafayette the ability to go back to the glory of his youth, before all this trouble took place for him at home in France. And for Americans, it was seen as a providential event. Sort of Lafayette was a test of the devotion of the American people to the principles that they laid out during the Revolution. And so, of course, if you're waiting, or if you're receiving, or if you're hoping for Lafayette's blessings, say, I had a great time among you, thank you so much for being great Americans. the word of Lafayette will only be valuable and worthy and important to Americans as long as the Americans believe that Lafayette himself is a representative of moral values, a moral person. If the person telling you that you're great breaks the law left and right, is a crook, you're not gonna give much about what he says, right? But if the person that tells you these things is a man, a moral man, a man that has revered the very same principles for 50 years without changing at all his discourse, if that man goes to jail because he refuses to cave on what he believes America is great, if he almost dies during the French Revolution for upholding American principles, if that man survives only to come back to America in 1824 to tell you how great you are, you're gonna trust him because his entire life narrates the greatness of your country. So the celebration we saw today, or the reenactment of the celebration of 1825, is just a reminder of why the United States in the eyes of Lafayette was truly great. Because yes, it was a republic, but it was a republic based on a sacred devotion by the people to the founding documents in an undeviating fashion. So that's also what we honor through Lafayette. We honor the principles upon which this country is based, so that it can have the best future going forward. Economic prosperity was the best way for Lafayette to measure the success of America. If I go to Buffalo, New York, Rochester, if I go to all these places, these cities are popping up left and right because the institutions of this country are allowing for economic prosperity, as opposed to France that goes into recession, to depression. America is successful, it's becoming rich, it's creating wealth to its people, to its institutions, to its state governments, to its federal government. So that's the story of the tour. It's a transitional time for the United States, for Lafayette. For him, it's the culmination of 25 years, 30 years of regeneration of his public identity. And for the United States, it's really a boost of confidence in the fact that their model is revolutionary and that it is not here to die tomorrow, it's here to stay forever, and it's here to lead the world toward an age of civilization, or a new age of civilization where freedom is unstoppable. The second part of what Jim asked me to do was to share with you my experience of visiting the Chateau of Lafayette in Lagrange. So Lagrange is the home of Lafayette's wife that they both inherited in 1800. That's where he spent most of his life at the end, after all the French Revolution trouble, after going to imprisonment, exile for a couple of years. When he comes back, his wife inherits the castle, and they lived there until 1834, with the exception of the tour, when he was here for 13 months. That chateau is a spectacular building. It's very private. It's owned by the Shamrock Foundation, which is managing the estate of the Lafayette family, which is managing a lot of the personal collections of the Lafayette family. And that chateau is not open to the public. It's only open for little tours at a time. If you have to call in advance and tell them who you are, and they will usually accommodate groups of 5-10 people at the most. But they're very, very discreet, for an obvious reason, is that Lafayette in France is not as popular as he is here. And what's fascinating about the chateau is what it represents. It's if you take a train from Paris, you're gonna be in the town in 25 minutes, not even. It's very close. But the Chateau of Lagrange in France is like Mount Vernon for the United States. It's a sanctuary of simplicity. It's a sanctuary of democratic equality. It's basically, when Lafayette tried to be George Washington for France, he tried to have Mount Vernon in France, and that was the chateau. So once again, it cultivates values of simplicity, democratic equality, humility, honesty, values that a lot of people in Europe believed had disappeared in the 1800s, and that only Lafayette was embodying. So, at the age of politicians in France like Louis Philippe, or many people that could not be trusted, Lafayette stood out because he could be trusted. He was American. He had honesty, he had humility, he had simplicity. That's why he's represented like that in your program, because even though he's an aristocrat, you show him with simple terms, surrounded by nature, rocks, and not very fancy habits, clothes. This is all on purpose. That chateau represents that. So, it's amazing to go in that chateau. There's a copy of the Scheffer painting, this very painting here. Most people know it because it is hanging in the US House of Representatives. What if I were to tell you that there's an exact copy of that painting? Not a copy, there are two originals. The one that you all know that's in the Congress, and there's another, the exact same one like that is hanging in the Chateau of Lagrange near Paris. It's incredible. You go upstairs, you have the room of Adrienne Lafayette. So, you know, there's a Christ cross above her bed. She was a devout Catholic. And it's a magnificent place because they show you the social life that took place there for a long time. They show you where she was sleeping, the bed where she died. And then they take you to the room of Lafayette, which is upstairs. And as you go upstairs, in his will, he had a certain layout that he wanted for his chateau. And you go upstairs toward his personal room, and you have, a portrait of Jefferson, a portrait of Jackson, actually. There's a portrait of Andrew Jackson. And before you enter his bedroom, there is an allegory of the manifested destiny of the United States that welcomes you inside Lafayette's bedroom. So, if you have any doubt, or if you hear people telling you, because of slavery that he opposed, yes, he did oppose slavery, of course. But there are some people that argue that he gave up on America at the end of his life because America was not moving fast enough on slavery. Why would he put the manifest destiny on top of his bedroom if he had given up, at the end of his life from the United States? What's that?
I've heard that among the pictures at the Grange, one is I think a map of Fayetteville.
I don't recall how we see that one.
And then a print of the Canova sculpture of George Washington.
I did not see those. They may have them removed during the visit, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have them. But they have memorabilia, like they have a cannon of the 1830 July Revolution in France. They have a copy of the U.S. Constitution that was reprinted in 1818. They have so many incredible documents in that place. Really, a look into Lafayette's life. But that chateau is unique in French history because it's so quiet. It's so distant from Paris. It's only 25 minutes of train, but really you have to know where it is in order to go there. You have to make arrangements. But it really narrates a life of simplicity. Once again, I will just finish with this and then we can take some questions. But this country was founded on American republicanism, meaning democratic equality. I'm not superior to you, you're not superior to me, we're equal. Okay? We're all equal. Simplicity, equality, humility. These are values that attracted the attention of Americans in the American Revolution because a lot of French people that came here, let's be honest, they were very pompous. They were very judgmental. Americans have no military discipline. They don't know what they're doing. Their art, their culture is very, very emerging, very nascent, very weak compared to the sophistication of European society. And here is this French aristocrat that is able to go beyond his class to understand Americans and to tell them, you're not inferior to me, I'm your equal, and I'm here to learn from you, actually. And in fact, if you look at the Valley Forge story of the winter there, the horrible conditions of the winter at Valley Forge, it became an incredible tale in the American collective memory because the American fighters were willing, because of what they believed in, they were willing to endure all these conditions in order to achieve freedom for themselves and their families. A trained European professional would never put up with conditions like that. It would be so rare. But an American militia soldier or soldier of the army is going to put up with that because of the worthiness of the cause that they're fighting for. Same idea for Lafayette. Americans were expecting him to say, oh no, I'm not going to sleep in that dirty bed, but he's not going to do that. He's going to put up with these conditions and be brothers with these Americans because he believes also in the same cause of freedom that they're fighting for. So in 1925, when he comes to Jackson, and 200 years later today, this is this whole ecosystem of values that we're honoring. We're just not honoring one man, we're honoring also the connecting tissue that he is between Europe, between America, between ancient society, between modernity, self-determination and despotism. All of these things are in Lafayette. So the job that we do at the Lafayette Trail today is we try to tell the story. We leverage these markers, like there's a marker across the street, like 170 all over the country. We try to do that to tell the story of Lafayette to a new audience and younger Americans. I believe personally the US is a special place, but it's only a special place as long as the people that live here understand why it is a special place. So we all have a duty is to pass on the story of the revolution to future generations so that the American exceptionalism can endure across generations. So I use Lafayette's life to do that, and obviously you do the same, otherwise you would not be here. But that was my personal little addition to the day that Jim asked me. Hopefully it's long enough or short enough.
Excellent.
If you guys have any questions, let me know, and I thank you so much for staying and listening to this. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Did he leave a diary?
of where he was each day? Because we know where he was.
So not him. He had Levasseur. He had a secretary with him.
But did they write about their experience of each place that?
Not in that level of detail. So there was a diary published in 1829 by Levasseur, the secretary that went with him all the way before. But I've seen his personal notes myself in Paris, and on the notes, it's actually cataloging the newspapers articles from American media.
See, that's all I've seen.
Yeah, and the problem is, a lot of people will tell you Levasseur is a primary source. It's actually not a primary source. It's the best hidden secondary source because he was with him on the carriage. But if you look at his notes, you will realize that when you open the notes, you only see a bunch of clippings from the Free Press of Halifax or Fayetteville, Observer.
Right.
So if you don't have access to the notes, you're gonna think it's a primary source, but it really isn't. But there are other books out there. There's another guy. I found recently notes of Levasseur's correspondence. He was actually writing letters during the tour. I found some of them like two months ago in France over the winter at the Foundation's archives, and it was absolutely spectacular because this is the first time I saw Levasseur write letters. We went there. I love these people. They're so nice. But until 2 months ago, I had never seen something like that.
Well, I just came across a document that said this guy named William Champ Carter said that Lafayette dined at his home at Runnymede in Goochland. And
I've never seen that anywhere else.
see, that's just it. So how do I know that really exists?
Well, ideally, you have another document that you can cross-reference it with, but if that doesn't exist,
No, he went from the courthouse to Fluvanna, which was Wilmington.
Yeah.
So did he stop at Runnymede on his way?
I don't know.
And I don't know, and I'd like to know.
Well, if you can send it to me, I would love to share my thoughts, but
Yeah, just like this big,
Okay.
that's it. And the slave that waited on her said it was the most exciting thing in her life.
Okay.
Slave name was Susan, and she said it was the most exciting event of her life. I want to know who she was, and I want to know.
I want to.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out.
So, yeah, to my point about the chateau, if you ever go to France, try to. It's worth it if it's possible. If you contact the foundation, it's really, especially as Americans, it's really a sanctuary to your country and what it stands for. So that's what I just wanted to say about the chateau. Yes, Jim.
I've many years been fascinated by the cemetery at Picpus.
Yeah.
And the mass grave.
Yeah.
Why was Adrienne Lafayette's mother guillotined? What did she do wrong?
They're aristocrats. They're aristocrats. That's the problem is, during the French Revolution, anybody that supports the king after 1791, when the first warning is April 18th, 1791, that's when Lafayette gives orders as the head of the militia, the National Guard. He gives orders to his troops, you can allow the king to go pray in Saint Cloud, I allow it. That's the first warning. The National Guard people disobey him and his orders, and there's some suspicion that arises around the king at that time. The second warning is when he tries to flee overnight in June of 1791 at Varennes. At that point, summer 1791, the king is an enemy. In the public opinion, people have no trust at all in the king to run the country. So you fast forward 1792, he loses to the Jacobins in 1792, and in 1793 he's guillotined. Point is, when the French nation, becoming a republic, decrees that a French king is incompatible with the nation, anybody that supports the king or is accused of supporting the king is decreed or declared to be a public enemy. That includes Lafayette, but he was actually captured at the time, so he escaped the guillotine. That also includes his family. Anybody that was an aristocrat was the victim of a major opprobrium because they thought that they were bad French people. They could not be trusted. They would always protect the king. They would never be good French people.
But how did Lafayette escape?
How did Lafayette what, escape?
How did he escape the guillotine?
He was serving militarily on the border with what's now Belgium, Germany, in the eastern part of France, and he was saying, "I am the representative of the constitutional compact of the French nation. I'm defending it." Problem is, in France, in Paris at the time, he's far from Paris. He's on the front lines. In Paris, the Jacobins are taking over the country, and they're saying, "No, Lafayette, you're not the representative of the compact. We are, and we're sending troops to arrest you because you're a traitor." So he realizes that he actually has lost his audience, and he has no choice. If he doesn't want to get his men that serves under him to be killed or guillotined, he has no choice but to leave the command and be a deserter. And that's what he does. He crosses the border into the Austrian Netherlands, now Belgium, and he's arrested by the enemies of the French Republic. So it's kind of a crazy story. You have a French aristocrat who is an enemy of the French Revolution, who is arrested by those that are trying to put the French king back on the throne because they think that you are responsible for taking the king down. It's very convoluted, but long story is, he is arrested by the enemies of the French Revolution, and he will spend 5 years from 92 to 97 outside of France, and that's at the time when the worst of the French Revolution is taking place, around 1783 actually, when both the king and his wife in October, January for one and October 1783 for the other, are losing their heads. Alright, any more? We're good?
Then they turned on Robespierre.
Yeah, they did, yeah, exactly. But no, finishing line is, the United States is a republic that has had the same law for nearly 250 years, and that's really the jewel of this nation. Is, in my country we are in our 5th iteration of a republic. We've had 2 empires, we've had the Bourbons, we have the Bourbons again, we've had Napoleon. So we have had an institutional instability for a long time, and you should remember that you have institutional stability because you have both the laws that are super resilient, and you have also the manners of the American people to obey those laws as a religious text. That's very important. As long as you have that, the American experiment will be okay. And that's why we narrate the life of Lafayette, right? To pass on that story to future generations. Yes, sir.
What is the next step for you in this tour?
So for us,
when you leave here,
for me, I'm going to Fayetteville in a few days to unveil a marker like the one you have here.
So you're not going through the Halifax?
I am not doing that. No. But we will be in Fayetteville on the 5th to unveil a marker with the Freemasons to mark exactly 200 years later the stop that Lafayette made at the Masonic Lodge over there. Freemasons, they call each other brothers. There's a reason, because they believe in democratic equality, so there's no better way to express that than to call your brethren brothers. And Lafayette was a Mason, and we're gonna go there and mark that connection for, perpetuity in the future. So once again, we use historical markers to tell a story and pass it on to future generations at no charge. We don't charge a penny to do these programs.
Okay. But Lafayette, he goes on to Halifax.
Then Enfield.
That's where he's going now.
Yeah, he's going to Halifax.
The same guy, Halifax, and then Enfield.
And then Enfield, and then I'll see them. I'll catch up with them in Fayetteville for the day of celebrations over there. Yeah.
One thing I'll mention too, folks, Julian is going to remain in the United States, and then sometime next year he'll be a U.S. citizen.
Hopefully.
Yeah. It will happen.
We'll apply. I'll apply. I'll be eligible in January of next year. You have to be here for 5 years, and I have been here 4 years and 2 months. So in less than 10 months, I can apply. So
when you get sworn in, we can have a party.
Exactly. Yeah. So hopefully the constitutional questions, history questions. I hope I'll be okay.
Thanks, Julian.
All right, thank you guys.
Is the Pomeroy Foundation going to do Lafayette markers regarding the revolution?
Yes, that's the next thing. I didn't answer your question about that. The next step is we're finishing the tour. Just yesterday, we made a national announcement that we have a marker in every state that Lafayette visited. We were missing Rhode Island. We got Rhode Island 2 days ago. So now we have a marker, at least one marker in every of the 25 states that he visited and Washington. And going into 2026, we have launched a new program to do Lafayette during the Revolutionary War. So we have 5 markers so far, but we're going to focus more on that. Hopefully we'll have a lot more markers celebrating the Revolutionary War going toward 2026. That will be the goal next. Okay. Thank you.